Japan has called for the immediate release of a Japanese journalist detained in Myanmar. A court has sentenced 26-year-old Toru Kubota to a total of 10 years in prison. And that's for violating sedition and communications laws. He was arrested in July while filming an anti-military protest in Yangon. Now, the military claims that he was participating in a demonstration and communicating with protesters. It also claims that he entered the country on a tourist visa. On Wednesday, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison for sedition and another 7 years for violating a law on telecommunications. He is being detained in Yangon's insane prison for political prisoners. He is due back in court next week for a hearing on his alleged violation of the immigration control law.
The European Parliament has passed a resolution condemning Myanmar's military government's crackdown on media freedom. This marks its fourth resolution on the crisis-hit country. It's now calling for the unconditional release of all journalists who have been unjustly jailed so far. Myanmar is the second largest jail of journalists in the world. That's according to media reports. Activist groups have recently been petitioning European governments for more sanctions on individuals linked to the Myanmar military. The European Commission has already released 4 rounds of sanctions. The latest tranche was in February, targeting 22 individuals and 4 entities, including state-owned gas company, which generates much of the country's revenue. Ollie Barrett joins us live from Budapest. Ollie, we've just seen this is hardly this first round of resolutions, sanctions passed by the European Union. There have been other rounds before. Will this latest round have any kind of effect on what's happening in Myanmar?
Yeah, this is a resolution that's been passed by MEPs at the European Parliament, which doesn't have any binding effect, but the idea is to increase pressure on the European Union, on the European Commission to move ahead with a fresh round of sanctions. There's been pressure in that regard from activist groups as well for some time. In this resolution, really, many European parliamentarians see as an attempt to keep the pressure on, to keep the focus on some of these issues. It's very strongly worded. It strongly condemns the military junta's what it calls violent and illegitimate rule in Myanmar. It says that MEPs, members of the European Parliament, urge it to drop all politically motivated charges against members of the press and media workers. It calls for the end of abuses and arbitrary arrests. It calls for the unconditional release of Aung San Suu Kyi. It also, as I say, calls directly on the European Union to introduce additional targeted sanctions. So while this resolution that MEPs have agreed, as I say, doesn't have any material, immediate, concrete effect, certainly European politicians hope that it does increase the pressure on Brussels to move forward with another round of sanctions.
Let's look at another European meeting happening right now in Prague. It aims to boost security and economic prosperity across the continent. Russia, another one, has been left out.
And that is very much the point in many ways. European countries hope to be able to show that they can get together and show solidarity against the Russian invasion of Ukraine in a format, in a framework that isn't the European Union. Now, there was some speculation for quite some time about whether, for example, the UK would want to be involved at all in this kind of construct, but it has decided to take part. There's also been some suggestion that the UK might be considering trying to take a leadership role in this organisation. These discussions that are taking place in Prague will have a significant focus on Ukraine, but also on energy issues that have been largely provoked by the Ukraine crisis, also on migration, general security issues too. And as I say, it's really an attempt to show that European countries can get together in a format that's not just the European Union, can cooperate, can show solidarity on some of these issues, but there's all sorts of questioning about whether this particular grouping can be meaningful, can have an impact in serious ways on the international scene, on global affairs. Very much seen as the brainchild of French President Emmanuel Macron, so he, for one, is hoping that it works.
Well, thanks to Ollie Barrett reporting live from Budapest.